Hello everyone and welcome back to Not Another White Box. My name is Cameron and today I'm going to talk you through what to look out for when buying a vintage caravan. Today we're going to be looking at something which is really quite special because it's a 1979 Trophy Agistar caravan, which, believe it or not, has never been used since the day it was made. And I'm going to show you inside and show you all the things which help back up this claim. But it's a project that I've had for a couple of years and it doesn't look as if I'm going to get around to doing it. So I'm looking at putting it on the market, and it's the perfect opportunity to have a little walk through it and discuss what to look out for when buying and certainly viewing and inspecting a classic caravan. Now we're looking today at really the project side of classic caravan ownership, perhaps what it's like to unearth something out of a garden or a driveway where it may have sat for 20 or 30 years, which is exactly what had happened with this caravan. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at. So without further ado, let's show you this incredible time warp survivor. Trophy were an emerging brand in the late 1970s, and by the mid-1980s they'd established a fairly dominant share of the market for budget and mid-range tourers. This particular model is one of their more earlier examples, and they appear to have first hit the market around 1976. They were produced in Lancashire, and this particular example did not travel far from the factory at all. In fact, it was bought new in 1979, delivered to the driveway which I retrieved it from a couple of years ago, and it's believed that it never moved since the day it was put there. Although it's been left outside its entire life, it's strangely in good condition for something that's just been left to its own devices. Perhaps not having the stresses of being towed down the road regularly has also helped to preserve the caravan further. It's amazing that it survives how it does, and a quick look inside, you will see just how much of a time warp this caravan really is. Incredibly, the upholstery is still wrapped in plastic, and none of the appliances show any signs of use whatsoever. The little Trophy Agistar was considered a very basic caravan when it was new. It's 12 foot long and weighs roughly 700 kilograms when laden. So for a 12-foot van of this size, it's pretty lightweight. I just was so bowled over by the condition of it and the fact that it's laid untouched for so long, and everywhere you look in the caravan there's just evidence that suggests that it's just never been used. So without further ado, let's dive in and take a look at some of the things that make this example such a miraculous survivor. Now, one of the things that really attracted me to this caravan was the fact that it's so original, and perhaps top of the list for what to look for in a vintage caravan is original upholstery and curtains, because it's so rare that you will get a vintage caravan that still has its original upholstery and curtains, let alone one where it's still wrapped in the plastic from the factory. It's just incredible. And sometimes you'll get someone trying to pull a fast one and saying, oh, it's wrapped in plastic, and they've blatantly done it. But the fragility of the plastic, the fact that as you're touching it, it's breaking, just goes to show that even if it was covered in plastic, it was done a very long time ago. But a little peek under the corners of the plastic wrapping and you'll see that the condition of the upholstery is absolutely as new. I mean, it's a collector's dream to find something like this. And you may have noticed the rather sad looking original curtains, which are full of holes and faded. Now, worry not, there is a small life hack, which I'll give you. And sometimes you'll be lucky that the caravan has a matching dividing curtain. And in my experience, a lot of people remove these curtains and put them in a drawer somewhere. And this caravan was no exception. So in this very period Sainsbury's bag, which was tucked away in the wardrobe, is the original dividing curtains in the original pattern. And there is more than enough material here to cut it up and make it into a full set of new curtains. And you could buy a plain orange or a plain brown to put the dividing curtain back. It's not going to detract from the originality of the caravan if these are no longer hanging around the bed, but certainly they will really go the extra mile to just really make the caravan pop when it's restored. So there's something to look out for when you buy a caravan that's been left for a very long time. Sometimes, and this has happened to me probably a handful of times now, you will find a matching dividing curtain hidden in the wardrobe or a drawer somewhere, and it's 99% of the time more than enough material to make a new set of curtains out of. So if you get lucky, such as I have here, then you've got the answer to keeping the caravan looking as original as possible. Another part of the caravan which just goes to show its immaculate, untouched condition is the kitchen. As I've shown in some shots at the start of the video, the cooker and the sink are just what you expect, absolutely brand new, and I don't think the cooker has ever even been lit, if I'm honest, because there is no sign of any burn marks around the burners. Again, this is something very unique, but the cooker and the sink will tell you a lot about the life that the caravan has led. If it's been looked after prior to it being abandoned in a garden, the kitchen will be typically very clean. However, it's quite common to find them caked in grease, chipped, damaged, the sink's marked, scored, etc. So I think it's really just a sign. If the kitchen's been well looked after and cleaned after every use, it will still be in good condition now. And I think that kind of sets the precedent for the rest of the caravan. Typically, someone who's going to look after the kitchen and the appliances is going to look after the caravan too. And it's that kind of knowledge which makes it feel like it's a more worthy restoration. If it's a complete basket case, then you know you're going to have to sort of be starting again, really, with much of the caravan. But in the case of this caravan, and so many like it, little touches like the fact that the cooker and the sink have been well looked after typically go hand in hand with a chassis that's been maintained, bodywork which has been looked after and is fairly straight and decent. It just goes to show the kind of life that the caravan has led. Having said that, the caravan still has some goodies to show, which I'm going to share with you now. And if we open this cupboard, which Trophy designed to be removed to allow the fitting of a fridge, which obviously the first owner of this caravan never opted for. But we will find some rather charming period accessories, such as this bright orange, fabulously 70s gas camping lamp, which was in here, which I'll leave in the caravan. It seems only right that it should stay with it. And perhaps, for me anyway, one of the best things you can find in a vintage caravan is vintage crockery. And whoops, this is no exception. In this bag we have a full set of bright orange melamine, which, looking at the light, doesn't have a mark on it. I don't think it's ever been used, much like the caravan. There's everything from sort of cups, there's milk jugs, there's salt and pepper pots, all matching. There's extra mugs, there's egg cups, and obviously I showed you the plates. There's a water jug, etc, etc. And these are just nice touches that really are just a fantastic thing to find in a vintage caravan. And it's the norm, I think, that typically people would clear all this stuff out before the caravan is sold. So the fact that it's all still here, just left exactly as it was, is pretty incredible. And again, another thing which shows you how it's never been used, if we look in this cupboard here, we have the original water filling pipe for the aqua roll or the water container, still in its packet. It's never been used, and that is definitely from the 70s. So again, just it's more evidence that the claim that the caravan was never used is almost certainly true. And just finally in here we've got things like water container, still got its price sticker on the front. That has just blatantly never seen any use. And typically in this cupboard, if you wanted, you could fit a gas oven. They call it a Vanessa oven, which was a very common fitment in the 70s, but something late 70s like this Trophy has the space that's engineered to fit these things. And even now today, it's very easy for us to go back and fit them as if it was an optional extra. And you're not going to detract from the originality of the caravan. Finally, another little touch before we move on is the grill pan is still here, with the tags and the paperwork for all the cooker still present. I don't think that's ever grilled any toast in its life. So all in all, it's an incredible find, and just looking at the evidence here just goes to show that it just really hasn't been used. One more thing before we move on is the number plate on the back of the Caravan matches this incredible 2,000 mile from new Triumph Toledo, which was still in the garage when I went to go pick up the Caravan. The car was bought new in 1975, and they intended that it would tow the Caravan, which obviously it never did. The car was featured on Bangers and Cash a couple of years ago and sold for an incredible £7,000 at auction, with its delivery mileage and everything still immaculate. Now we've had a good look at the history of this particular Caravan, let's take a closer look at what we should be looking for when you're considering buying a classic Caravan project. Without doubt, the most concerning thing with a classic Caravan is probably the chassis. Now, before you even consider towing it on the road or even moving it from where it is, we want to thoroughly inspect the chassis before we unearth it from its 30 or 40 year resting spot. Now, this particular Caravan has a peak hitch, which are absolutely rubbish, to be quite frank with you. But one of the nice things about them is they are set slightly wider, and the late 70s B&B hitches are the same. So it's very easy to replace them with a modern Alco hitch with automatic reversing. This is an automatic reversing hitch as well, meaning that if you reverse the Caravan, the brakes don't jam on like they do with older ones. But the peak hitches are quite problematic. The handbrake on them has a plastic button, which always rots. The jockey wheels are known for rusting, and the hitch head itself, I think the less said about that, the better. I've had various Caravans with these peak hitches, and they just don't couple up to the car and unhitch as nicely as the rival B&B hitch of the same era. But if you want to keep it original and preserve it, you might get lucky on eBay and find bits and pieces for them. Typically the B&B hitches of this era are a bit better serviced with parts, because Alco took them over and carried on supplying the spares for maybe 10 or 15 years after they ceased production. So unfortunately the peak hitch didn't afford the same luxury, so spares are very thin on the ground for them. So we want to be inspecting the A-frame, checking it for rust. This has some rust on the strengthening pieces, which really it's up to you. You only want to be towing something that's safe to tow down the road. If in any doubt whatsoever, get it trailered to where you need to work on it and go from there. As it happened, I was happy enough that this A-frame was solid enough to tow it, and it managed fine for about 250 miles. So just because it might look rusty doesn't mean that it is, but of course it's everyone's worst nightmare, and obviously wouldn't be very good if the A-frame fell off and the Caravan was a danger to other road users. So perhaps, unless you've got experience of this and know where the structural integrity lies in the A-frame, it's a job best left to the experts, and if in doubt, get a new A-frame. It's going to cost you about £300–400 maximum, I would have thought, and a mobile welder will come out and fabricate a new A-frame to replicate the existing one and transfer the hitch over for you. So that's pretty much it for the A-frame end. Obviously, with a Caravan like this, which hadn't moved for maybe 40 years, the wheels were a particular point of concern. So please check the wheel bearings. Please check that there's no play in the wheel hubs. The brakes, make sure that they release and don't stick on. You'll thank me for that later. There's nothing worse than the Caravan wheel setting fire as you're going along. And most importantly, new tyres. The tyres that were on this were the originals, and yes, they held air, but that does not mean they are safe to go down the road. They should not be more than 5 or 6 years old, and even then you might find they have flat spots and cracking. So unless the previous owner of the Caravan can produce you a receipt for new tyres, or the date stamp on the side suggests that they are new, don't risk it. It's not worth it. You can get 2 Part 1 tyres for about £50 that will get the Caravan home safely. it's not worth the risk. If you're going to commit to buying a vintage caravan and a restoration project, then you have to budget for new tyres. It's just probably the most important thing you will do if you are taking it on the road. At the back here we've got what's left of the original road lights, which of course are in no fit state to be used, but you may get lucky and find that the caravan that you're picking up has its original lights still. Most faults with them can be traced to either a faulty earth, which is usually under the back chassis rail, or the actual 12N lighting socket itself. So it's well worth having a spare one of those in your toolkit, because the majority of problems can be solved with the lights at the socket itself, and it's a 5-minute job to replace it. If you can wire a plug socket, you can wire one of these, and the diagram is all over the internet. It's so easy to do. If you're having any problem, and this goes for someone who might be watching who has a caravan already and has issues with the lights, try replacing the socket first of all. You often find that the connections are corroded, or the water's run into it and rotted the connections to the pins, and it's just little things like that which are going to cause you slight aggravation with the lights. So if in doubt, replace. And the light units on the back of the caravan, they can all still easily be bought, and if you're having any issues with them whatsoever, it's best to get some new ones. They're not very expensive either. The particular light units that should be on this caravan, you're looking at around £20 a light unit, plus £4–5 for a light socket. So for less than £50 you've got all new lights, and it's just easier, peace of mind if you're going to be towing it down the road, that you can go to the caravan, hook it up, check the lights, and they will all work. So this caravan, unfortunately, the lights have rotted away, so before you will be towing something like this anywhere, make sure you have a light board fitted. And that's the most important thing. It is against the law to tow a trailer down the road that does not have its own working lights. It may have a trailer board on it, but it has to be working, and the number plate on the back has to match your towing vehicle. So it's a case of just knowing the law and making sure that you stay safe, and you are not a nuisance to other road users. So let's just make sure, if you're picking up a project, and we've all seen them, old caravans bouncing down the M5 with no number plate and lights that don't work, and when they break everything lights up, or it's like a disco at the back. You shouldn't be taking to the road if the lights don't work, and the police will most likely pull you up and not allow you to proceed until the light board's been fitted or you've fixed the issue. So just make sure it's just a maintenance thing, and like I said, replace the socket, check the bulbs and check the earth. You will 9 times out of 10 fix the fault there. It's not going to be a case of delving into wiring and rewiring. The vast majority of the time it's those 3 very simple things. So be sure to check through them and make sure that your lights work. Now, don't be alarmed if you're buying a classic caravan and there's no key for it, because in my experience it's quite rare to get the key for the caravan. But these old locks use an MC series of keys, and the keys are numbered 1 to 40. In the case of this one, it was MC 27. Now you will find on the back of the door lock is often written the key number. You can simply look it up on eBay and purchase the key according to the number. And if not, if it's not been written for some reason, you can take the door lock out and you can still buy a new one that will fit. This particular aluminium lock is a Cara lock, and it's still available to buy new if you want to change it. And you can also change the barrel for something that offers a little bit more security than a key series that only has 40 numbers in it. They extended the MC range to about 90, but it wasn't until the late 70s to the mid 80s that this actually happened. So any vintage caravan is going to be MC 1 to 40, unless it's got the old mortise style lock like my Project Sprite Aerial has, in which case they're easy enough to replace. But don't be alarmed if there's no key. It's quite often the case. If they've sat in the garden for years, they've not been locked, they've not been looked after in that sense, it's nothing to worry about. It can quite easily be fixed, and it's not something that should put you off buying the caravan. When we're looking at the door, you'll notice that there's a lot of water staining on it, and this has been caused by the door being left open in the rain. The door itself is actually really solid. There's no reason to replace this part of it. The bulk of the damp appears to be in this part of the roof, and it's quite obvious on closer inspection that it's leaked through the skylight and it's tracked in. The caravan's obviously been stored on a slight angle and it's run into the back corner through the roof. Now, feeling up between the panels, the roof beam is actually solid. So what tends to happen with these older caravans that don't have very good insulation is that the internal boarding carries the brunt of the water damage, which is exactly what's happened here. And this looks terrible, but it's not the worst thing to repair. Another great thing about this particular caravan is the roof is been constructed in sections, and to remove these two panels and replace them is not going to be a massive lot of hardship. Now, it's easy to look at it and think, oh, I should test it for damp, but to be honest, leave the damp meter at home. It's not going to tell you anything. This is dry rot, and the caravan has now been kept inside for a couple of years that I've had it. So your damp meter is going to give you a reading of precisely 0 in that panel. I don't want to say they're bad, because with modern caravans, with modern construction, they can highlight water ingress. But with older caravans such as this one, it's so easy to spot. You don't need any fancy equipment to tell you if it's rotten or not. You've got two things, your eyes and your nose. You can see that there's water staining and leaks and damaged, and you can also see or feel if there's the rot, and you can certainly smell it as soon as you walk in the caravan. If it's actively wet, you will smell it. Now, this caravan, like I say, has been inside my barn drying out for a couple of years, so there is no bad smell in here whatsoever. But that's not to say it's not damp. So you'll see lots of conflicting advice on the internet about testing a caravan for damp. Another one which grinds my gears a bit when people look at vintage caravans is the floor test. People testing for a spongy floor. Now, read any guide to buying a second-hand caravan, and yes, they will tell you, stomp up and down the floor inside the caravan and you will feel if it bounces or not. And this is true of a modern caravan with a laminated floor where there's one layer of wood, a layer of insulation and a layer of wood underneath. It's called a sandwich, ironically. And what happens is the glue breaks down between the layers and the floor bubbles up. So when you walk on it, it bounces. And it's not a dramatic problem to fix at all, but you will never get this floor to bounce, no matter how rotten it may or may not be. It will never bounce because it's a solid piece of wood. So really, you need to be getting on your hands and knees, looking underneath the caravan and feeling around the outer edges, as tends to be where the floors rot in old caravans. So this one, luckily, when I inspected it, is really, really great shape for its age, and it's not going to cause us any problems going forwards. When we're inspecting for damp in an old caravan, we want to be feeling for it and looking for it. Like I've said, the damp meter is not really any use to you, and it's difficult because they're going to pick up on the moisture in the air, but old caravans will rot as opposed to modern ones which just get damp and it festers behind the wall. Old caravans, you're going to see the damage on the wallboard before it even touches the framework. So that's kind of an upside to them, of that generally, if you can see it on the surface, behind it isn't going to be a total basket case. Like for example in this roof here, up between the roof panels, the roof beam actually feels very solid. So it just tends to happen that the water is absorbed by the wallboard, and that's it. But even so, we want to be just feeling around the panels, feeling, giving the walls a tap, seeing if they flex. You might find there's water stains like there is in this kitchen. Mostly it's condensation from the glass windows which runs down and sits there. So just because you can see water damage doesn't mean it's rotten. Just use a bit of common sense with it, and kind of the advice that you'll read online applies to a modern caravan which has a very different construction to something the age of this or older. So the way that the water attacks the structure is quite different, to be honest, and it just takes a bit of, you know, I've had loads of people come and look at caravans over the years and they've got their damp meter and they're saying, I can see that it's damaged but I'm not getting a reading. Well, you won't, because old caravans tend to suffer dry rot, whereas modern ones will suffer damp. And there's all kinds of different ways that water ingress can cause damage. And you tend to find with the older caravans that are using, you know, like plywood and hardboard, that the interior panelling bears the brunt of all the damage. You'll notice as well, most caravans from the late 60s onwards have the plastic window capping, which you'd have seen in the clips, is all cracked and falling off. It's not a big deal. This is something which should be replaced as a matter of maintenance when it comes to an old caravan. So you don't need to worry, it's still obtainable. Search for window capping on eBay and measure the width of the wall. And whoever gets this caravan next is treated to a big roll of it underneath the seat, which I bought for it. And it's a job which will take a couple of hours, just a case of opening up the windows, replacing it, nailing it back into place, putting all the window catches back on, and you're good to go for another 10 years or so. So if you see that in a caravan, it's nothing to worry about. It looks far worse than it is. It's actually a good way of inspecting how solid the window frames are, because as the capping's broken off, it will reveal if there's watermarks there or ingress. But in the case of this van, all the windows look absolutely perfect. And a lot of the time it's just the condensation which has caused damage to the wood. So again, little points to look out for and little things to know about classic caravans, which if you're new to it, like a lot of people are, and you're just reading all this conflicting advice online, this is you know, the true advice for a caravan of this age. I hope you've enjoyed this little tour of this 1979 Trophy Agistar today, and hopefully I've covered most points. No doubt if I've missed anything, people will ask me in the comments and I will be sure to answer as best I can. But thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed looking at this rather incredible time warp survivor. I still can't believe it's never been used, and I would love to be the one that finishes the damage with the roof and the various bits and pieces and gets to be the first one to rip off the covers of the upholstery and use the caravan. But I've just got so many projects, and you're going to see over this year I've got some pretty exciting things coming to the channel. So unfortunately the trophy's taking up space, it's got to go. So it's sad, but I know that whoever buys it will get something that's a really incredible piece of caravanning history, and hopefully it will stay on the classic caravan scene and we'll get to see it. Who knows, maybe I might even get to catch up with the next owner when it's finished and back on the road. I don't know. In the meantime, make sure you're following Not Another White Box on social media. I'm on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, and I'm talking all the time about caravans. So make sure you join me there for the conversation. Be sure to subscribe to the channel because there's a lot of very different content planned for the next few months. And also I mentioned on my social media that there is an imminent arrival of a new long-term project. So stay tuned, subscribe, and thank you very much for watching.